Hi, everyone. I am back. And thank you for being here once more today. I'm really excited because I am talking to another good friend of mine, Brandon LaPier. Hi, Brandon.
Hello.
I'm really excited to talk with you, Brandon, because you have so many experiences and so much knowledge and how do I say it, inspiration and what you do to help people heal and heal the planet. We've worked together in many areas. So I can't wait to dig in and get to know more about you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. I'm going to read your bio here. Okay, Brandon is a psychic empath, mystic, and healer. He has had mystical, paranormal, and ET experiences his whole life. A man after my own heart. Brandon's many experiences throughout his life led him to discover and understand his gifts and ultimately his personal connection to Creator. Brandon's greatest wish is to help empower others to unlock this personal connection within themselves so that we can create a better world together. And Brandon's website is www.brandonlapier.com. And I will have that, of course, down in the details. Brandon, please share a little bit about your background and let's just start chatting.
Okay. My background. I I sometimes don't know where to start on that because
Mm,
there's so many different things I could touch on.
sure.
But basically, I started having mystical experiences when I was young. I would dream of the future, and then it would happen, and I would have other strange experiences. Bird landing on my shoulder, flying out of the sky, and animals doing weird things around me and following me. And also, like, my friends would come over and they would always tell me how we'd always have these weird experiences together. Years later, a friend from my childhood friend I met, and he's like, "Man, growing up around you, weird stuff always happened." I'm like, yeah.
You're like, it's normal.
It's normal. Yeah, we sit outside the window at night because we lived in the mountains, right, kind of close by Mount Adams, where ESETI is.
Mhm.
So we'd sit outside at night and watch the lights in the sky move around and do funny things. Yeah, and of course, I had a lot of experiences through that. And so look, a lot of these strange things happened that I didn't really um, think too much about, and unless I talked about them, and then everybody gave me this weird look, like they didn't understand. Then I just learned to keep it to myself usually. Couple things I would share with my mom, but she would accept what happened, but not really say too much about it. Like she didn't really have an opinion either way. Um, Memories of past lives or experience with ETs that I had, and or paranormal, like spirits and beings showing up in my house.
Yeah, there
Um,
doesn't, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'll probably be doing a lot of that. But
yeah,
doesn't it seem like ET contact and paranormal
they
types
usually go
that they
together.
go hand
Yeah,
in hand? Yeah.
yeah. People with a lot of ET experiences will always talk about the paranormal experiences they have too. Usually, they have some at least, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So grew up in a house with ghosts.
Yeah. Right, right, where you're aware of the spirits. I think
Yeah.
probably houses, I mean, there's spirits all around us, right? You're a psychic medium, you're an empath and all that. So there's spirit all around us all the time, but when that door is open or when we're connected and aware of energies beyond the veil, then we are able to feel and see or just be aware of them. Would that make does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's this thing that happens too, that it happens whether you have a group of psychic children together or it happens when you have like ET experiencers. So Free, you're familiar with Free? I
Who?
forgot the group Free. It's like something extra sensory, extraterrestrial. I forget what it is
Hmm,
exactly, but
I'm not.
basically they're a UFO and ET experiencer research group.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things that came out in the researcher, they said that every ET experiencer is a psychic, but not every psychic is an ET experiencer.
Oh.
And through the thousands of studies that they've done and people they've interviewed, that's one of the things that they concluded. It's absolutely true. But when you
Okay.
think about like what you're exposed to on a frequency level, when you have these experiences, you're experiencing these beings with vastly different frequency bases and consciousnesses, and they do things like walk through walls. They do things like teleport, and they're able to remote view easily. They're so much more than just that. But when they open these things up in you, telekinesis, right? And they open these
Mm-hmm.
things up in you, you naturally open that up in your own field. You're participating in it, and naturally, in this participation activates something within you. And of course, there's like the genetics to go along with it, because usually they follow family lines, but it definitely opens up something within you. But the
Yeah.
same goes true when you have psychic children together. You have extremely psychic children around ones who maybe aren't recognized being so much. And then when they're together, the ones who aren't will start to activate their own abilities just through the observation of the others.
Mm. Okay. I love that. That's great information. Yeah. And the group is called Free, FREE.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, Rodriguez, I know, is one of the last names of one of the authors. He's one of the researchers. I
Okay.
don't remember the other ones.
Yeah, I'll have to check into that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a child, you were having extraterrestrial or ET experiences, psychic, paranormal, all that kind of.
Yeah. Things that happened that I didn't understand, that didn't make any sense, and screen memories, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like one of the well, a couple screen memories, that the first two that really stood out. The first, I was in my house, and this is after I watched like Communion.
Oh,
And I was a kid. I was watching
oh,
Communion,
yeah.
and I watched other horror movies like The Exorcist and all these other ones that normally scare the crap out of other people. And I was like, that's just not real. But
Mm-hmm.
watching Communion, it was like I was terrified, like
Yeah, I couldn't watch
terrified.
it. Yeah.
And I remember thinking when I was watching it, the thought just was automatic, as, oh, that's what they do. That's what they do. So I was believing what I was seeing, and there was an association back then. I didn't really put two and two together. Why did I think that's what they do when I was watching the movie?
Right.
And then later on, I had this experience where the blue light was coming in the window, and my heart started racing. I got up, and it was super vivid, like it was real, you know. But then that part of the brain says, "Oh, this is this
Yeah.
real?" But my heart started racing. I know what this is. They're here again. I know what this is. And I started walking out in the hallway, and it was really silly what I was seeing. And there was these three grays driving around my living room in go-karts.
Oh,
And I started like laughing. I was like, this can't be real. Like it seems real, but then like it was super real till they got to that point, and then it was just like this weird kind of real, kind of not real. And I'm like, this is not real. This is silly. Like I can't be scared of this. And I remember one of the go-karts came up really close to my face, and then it drove away, and it's so close that the go-kart would have been through my body. And I was like,
oh,
that's weird. And then I woke up. I was like, but my fear of them was gone. The fear that was instilled through watching Communion, all of that was gone. Like
oh, good.
this is weird. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not scared. That's good. And I didn't really think too much more about it. I knew that I would see lights in the sky. There was like this thing. I was drawn to them. I would always draw them just when I was sitting there
Mm.
by myself as a kid. I would just draw them over and
The
over. And
typical grays.
typical grays and other ones too.
Okay.
And I didn't know what the other ones were. I thought they were,
Yeah.
I didn't know what they were, but I was drawing them. And I learned later through going through photographs of other people with experiences that was the same beings that some of the other people were having.
Mm.
Um, and then a little bit later, I was a little bit older, more in my later teens. I had a job at Taco Bell, and I was working there late at night, and I was driving home, and I stopped, and there was this huge porcupine crossing the road, and it was so big that the quills came up past the hood of my car.
Oh, that's a big porcupine.
That's a big porcupine. But I was like, oh, that's a big porcupine. That's what I
I
thought.
lived in Texas and I've never seen porcupines that big in Texas.
Me either.
Yeah.
I was like, but I didn't think anything of it. I was like, that's a
Yeah.
huge porcupine. I was like, I didn't know they got that big. You know,
Right.
I'm trusting what I'm seeing with my own eyes. And there was this like moment where like I was like, I looked around and it's gone. I'm like, I must have just spaced out for a second.
Yeah.
Porcupine's gone. And I drove home. And then the next day I was talking to my mom, like, Mom, I saw this huge porcupine last night. It was this big. She's like, no, you didn't. What do you mean? No, I didn't. She's like, they don't get that big. I'm like, oh, I saw it. And she's like, I don't know what you saw, but it wasn't a porcupine. She grabs this little nature book. She opens it up. See, and it's like tallest they get is like a foot tall. Like it was not a porcupine. I don't know what that was. I'm like, I don't know. I thought I even heard the quills like rattling back and forth when I was walking, but okay. And it wasn't until years later. I actually I had some other ET experiences when I went to Iraq. So this is after I went to the military. I came back. I had some experiences in the military too.
Thank you
But
for your service, by the way.
oh yeah, thanks. But it was after I got out. I was in Iraq as a contractor. I had an ET, a shadow being appeared in my room over there. I was activated over there. Like some other things were opening up in my awareness. And then when I came back, a whole ton of experiences started happening all at the same time, this sort of short period of time. One of the things that I came across, of course, was Dolores Cannon's books.
Yeah.
And I was reading that and I saw the story of the owl, this woman driving behind this huge owl with a wingspan that spanned across the road, right? The entire road. And she followed it for an hour. And then in hypnotic reduction, she realized that she wasn't following an owl. She was following this giant orb. And it was interacting with her in some way, but had the screen memory. So she didn't remember it.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that and it just sent chills up and down my spine. And I remembered those two experiences and we realized that there was something more to them.
Right. It was her books, the Convoluted Universe series, the first
Yep.
one, The Custodians,
Yep.
that triggered the heck out of me. And yeah, I mean, my memories about that time were already starting to come forward.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, so much there. I mean, I would start shaking with remembrance. And I mean, the vibration would get so high with some of what she was writing, what these people were experiencing, that I had to I had to put the book down and oh my god, I can't take this, I can't take this, but then I'd pick it back up. But it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
wow, that's crazy. I remember her. I think that was in The Custodians, wasn't it?
I I thought that was one of the convoluted universe
Okay,
ones, but
that is the first one of the Convoluted Universe, The Custodians. So I don't know which
is
one
it?
it's. Yeah, I think so.
I
Anyway,
thought they were separate. Anyways, it doesn't
mhm,
matter. It's one of those
yeah,
books.
yes.
Because I remember I think I read the convoluted universe first, and I picked up the custodians, and then I read the
Oh,
rest.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got all of her books somewhere.
Yeah, same here. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
A lot of
Yeah,
them. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. So do you I wanted to ask you when you saw the that's just so funny, that visual of those three ETs right around your house, the little
And go
go-karts.
karts. So like, yeah,
So
yeah, it was really
do
funny.
you think that what or does your intuition tell you now, years and years later, that uh, anything about that they did that to help you feel comfortable, or that you put that screen memory on that, that's what your brain was telling you, or that they were trying to help you get comfortable with it? What do you feel, or both? I don't know.
Well, I definitely feel it was a screen memory. Like
Okay.
they put the screen memory on
Okay.
in order, and it's one of those like if you look at all the other cases too of people who've been having these ET experiences, they usually have screen memories that are just normal enough to make you question it, but also enough to make you dismiss it at the same time.
Yeah.
A lot of them, and then you dismiss it for a little bit, and then you go back to it. So it's almost like because thinking about the giant porcupine. Like these are really intelligent beings. There's no way they did that on accident.
Hmm.
It was one of those things they look through and like, well, at some point he's going to interact this information. It's going to trigger this and it's going to investigate. So, but the other thing too, it was like the silliness of it. It wasn't meant to be normal. It was meant to be silly. If it's
Silly.
silly, I'm not
Yeah.
afraid of it.
Right. Yeah.
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 And
And
so
as a
that,
kid, you kind of accept that funny silliness more.
yeah,
You're more apt to accept that.
yeah, yeah. So it was really interesting. I mean, later on when I got regressed, there was no go-karts, of course. there was I walked out into the hallway, and instead of seeing that, I saw these three grays, two on either side of me and one in front of me. And I remember them touching my shoulder, and then I blacked out and floated up.
Wow. That is so crazy, the number 3, because that is my 3 gray beans was number 3. There was 3 of them that protected me as a child and took me on the ships and healed my body. And I went for teachings and to be with other kids. And there was 3 of them. And I've heard other people say that that there was 3 gray beans that would come and take them quite a bit. I mean, not quite a bit, but I've heard a lot of people say that. That's amazing. So that's interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I
I mean,
wonder what that is all about.
well, what I think about the position they were in,
Yeah.
there was two on either side of me, and they touched my shoulder. And then there was one interacting with me consciously. So they each had a different role, and two were neutralizing my consciousness and my body so that I would accept the float up or whatever. So they
Okay.
were shifting me in a different space. That's how I read it, at least.
That makes
And
sense.
yeah, the other one, it was there like just interacting with me consciously, like looking into my eyes, and I was looking back.
Yeah. I remember one screen memory that I had as a kid. And I remembered it I mean, it was real time at the time. There's not a lot that I remembered as a child from all that stuff that was going on with me, where I was living in Mount Angel, Oregon. I am in Oregon now, back in Oregon, but in Mount Angel. And we lived with my grandmother, and I was looking out in the backyard, and for some reason I just felt tranced out. It was almost like I didn't know how I got there, kind of thing, when you're just like, what? And what I saw was a black panther walk
Hmm.
across the yard in the backyard. And I remember at that time thinking, at that time I was thinking, hmm, that's kind of weird. And and then it took a couple minutes and I started feeling anxious and scared. But it was I probably possibly I was coming out of maybe them dropping me off or bringing me back or whatever. I don't know, but I never really analyzed it till just now.
Yeah, that's that could be something different than you were experiencing visually, for sure, especially given the reaction that just happened out of nowhere.
Yeah, not
I mean,
Black Panther is what comes to mind, but a big, huge, huge black cat, not a small house cat, huge black cat with the gait and walk of like a
yeah,
panther kind of thing. But that's what my mind was thinking I was seeing.
but I don't think we have black panthers up here.
I I know.
So I mean, if you look at they're down in South America. They're
Yeah,
down there. We have cougars up here.
but they're
We
not black.
they're not black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
So
just out of the ordinary enough, maybe they
mhm,
did that on purpose, perhaps. And that's where most of my experiences were at my grandmother's house, pretty much all
yeah.
of them, when as a kid, where it was just out of the ordinary enough for that to be in my mind that, it stick in my mind that it was weird enough to stay there and realize this is a trigger for me later.
Hmm.
Yeah, they do that, don't they?
They definitely do that. Yeah, they definitely do that. Lots of
So,
dreams come true, and you don't know. I'm like, okay, did I actually do this last night, or is
mm,
this a memory? Or
right. It's so hard to put
yeah.
it in that category.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of um, dreams. I'll be on the ship, things will be happening, and then I
Mhm,
wake up. I'm like, okay, so did they take me or what?
mhm.
Sometimes, sometimes they'll do things too that um, it makes you question it. So there'd be layers of things. Like I had this very, very vivid part, and then it went into this kind of like chaotic looking dream. One of the telltale signs is if you really examine your dream,
Mhm.
it doesn't look like it's yours. It doesn't feel like it's yours. It looks like and feels like something's laying over the top of you that you're watching.
Oh, yeah.
And there are other beings who infiltrate people's dreams like this too. And what the what people get sucked into it because they begin to interact with it without questioning it. And so they'll pull themselves into it. Now you're in that energy. But if you watch it, you can see it beforehand.
Okay, explain that to me.
So there are beings that try to manipulate people's minds, right?
Oh,
Some of
yeah, I know that. Yeah.
some of them do that in your sleep though.
Like
And
Freddy
so
Krueger.
kind of like Freddy Krueger. So I was looking at that information and I was examining it. Usually what happens is I get aware of a piece of information, I start thinking about it, and the universe responds by giving an experience that explains the whole thing.
Mhm.
That's how my life pretty much works. So I have all these weird things that happen to me. But this particular experience, I was laying in bed and there was this being that came over me, and or this dream state that came over me, and it looked like something that I was like, what is that? And I want to go in closer to kind of examine it in this dream state. And then because I also didn't want to get sucked in, and I was thinking, well, if this happens, how will I know? Because I don't want to have that happen to me. So how do people recognize this, recognizing that these layover things happen? And then my fire alarm went off. My fire alarm went off, and it was weird because it went off randomly. It's never done this before. It never did this since. There was no fire. It got me out of bed. I looked at it, and then as soon as I walked out in the hallway, it went off.
Mhm.
And then I looked. After that was done, I went back to bed and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, that was a being trying to pull me into this dream state, and I was just made aware of it before I got sucked in. And I was also made aware it was my curiosity going into dealing with whatever those energies were in front of me. But I was just out enough that I didn't necessarily recognize it at the time, because of my conscious state, I always know when this is happening.
So were you lucid in the dream? Was it a lucid dream?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
lucid. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the similar things happen sometimes with the ET experiences. And so there was another time, about 5 years ago, I think. I was I had scheduled to go to a UFO conference like a month later, but then this one period, I suddenly had this dream, and I was on board a ship, and in front of me, I was talking to this hybrid being, and I was comforting him. Said, "Don't worry, it's okay. Everything's going to be fine." He was on this metal table. There was this light coming down. It was dark around. There was another tall gray being off to the side in the shadow, like typically they do, like,
Mhm.
Um, but then there was just me and this hybrid being, and it was kind of like it was autopilot, my words, my comforting. It
Mhm.
seems to be what I do in these states when I'm around other beings. I go and I comfort them.
Right.
So I'm comforting this being, and then he gets up off the table. He's like, "Okay, your turn." We're both standing there naked, and I'm like, "Wait a minute!" It's like my awareness just kicked in. Wait a minute! What are you gonna do to me? What's gonna happen here? I want to know what you're doing before I get on the table. And I started going like, I deserve to know. And there was a part of me that freaked out a little bit because I had no idea what was going on, why I was there, what they're about to do. I just wanted information. And next thing I knew, there was this chaotic scene that I was seeing. It was this dream. There was all these moving things going on. It was like it looked like chaos. I'm like, why am I watching this? What is this? This is not a normal dream. I'm like, and I started just kind of wondering why I was having this weird chaotic thing, and I woke up. And so I was
Interesting.
fully aware of there was this other layer on me that it didn't seem normal, and I knew it was connected somehow to the dream experience of the ET that seemed totally real, of course, in the dream. Um, but I I had wondered what that was, and just in this last year, I actually had another regression where I went back to that place, and what I experienced is everything was like it was, up to the point where I started questioning things. And because I was like jolted into this awareness, I'm like, what are you trying to do to me without my knowledge?
Mhm.
I started resisting and fighting them. and I accidentally hurt one of them. And because of
That's what
that,
came to mind. Yeah.
they blocked out me hurting them. But the whole battle, the chaos of me interacting with it, because you're what they're replacing it with has to match your emotional state.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you won't accept it.
Right.
But by them blocking out my memory of hurting them, one of them, I wouldn't have any personal feelings about it. I wouldn't feel bad about myself. I wouldn't feel
So
have
they
that these
protected you.
they protected me. And that's what I came to after the realization of what actually happened and why they did that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's what came to mind when you were talking about all this chaos and everything. Is it sounds like you were fighting and,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
were
I was
fighting.
fighting. I was like,
Yeah.
ah.
Wait a minute, this wasn't the deal. I didn't sign on for this. I'm the healer here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no
Wow, that's
idea what they were trying to do, but
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that now I know that I've had, how do I put this? It came to mind a minute ago, but now it just went out. With dreams, well, I teach courses on dreams and out of bodies and things like that, lucid dreaming and dream interpretation. Um, I mean, they're just so multi-layered. I I mean, I'm of the understanding, that's just me personally, right? Where when something comes in our awareness that is maybe um, of a uh, darkness or shadow or whatever, it's just my understanding. And I've never had anything like that you experienced that I'm aware of, where there was a dream layer overlay. That it's my understanding that that's something that we've that's coming up within us that we need to deal with, or that, and there might have been something there with you that I don't know. I'm not trying to analyze it. You. But with me personally, um, I've felt that when things come up like that don't feel quite joyful or in line with, what I'm dealing with in the dream, I have to deal with it within me, within that, from my understanding, what I've been taught, within that realm. Does that make any sense? Am I
oh,
making any sense with
yeah,
that?
absolutely.
Okay.
Um, so like the way I look at it is, and it's the same thing when I'm dealing with other people in my own personal experience,
Okay.
same thing in dreams. Everything that I experience is an extension in some way of myself. So when I
Okay.
heal that part of myself that was reacting or experiencing the thing which I'm seeing,
Yeah.
and I allow myself to re-perceive that in a new way, it changes myself, but it also changes that other person or that experience of the other person.
Right.
And
Right.
you will see actual personality changes in them when you do that too.
Totally. Yeah. When you
So
take responsibility for whatever caused or whatever brought that, if I'm understanding you correctly, whatever brought that um, experience to you that caused some kind of a negative reaction in you, or a negative reaction with the experience,
yeah,
meaning bringing up what our shadows, what we need to deal with that we haven't dealt with. Does that make sense?
yeah. So a lot of things that I was experiencing through this little period of time was a result of my MILAB experiences. So not only did I have the ET experiences, but
Okay.
I had military abduction experiences,
Oh, I want to talk about that. Okay.
and
Yeah, we need to do more than one show together. Okay.
it
Yeah.
it was through that. But I did the same exact thing though.
Mhm.
I started looking in myself. I'm like, okay, what is drawing this to me? Where is this from? What layers are there? And I found like these subconscious programmings that were put in place, and so I started dismantling those. But yeah, they stemmed from a lot of them from the MyLab.
So
So
how did you know that you were part of that? How was it, through hypnosis?
um, no, not exactly. Well, some of it, yes, but uh, like more pieces of information came out from that.
Okay. Okay.
But like looking at like I was drawn to the SSP information, and it felt so familiar,
Okay.
right? And
Yeah.
some of it was like I've been there before. And when I
For
when I
those who
act
who don't know what SSP is, Secret Space Program. Yeah.
when I started looking at that, and it's just like I mentioned before, I have a question that I put out to the universe, and then I get the response around me. And so there are like these different experiences over and over that will confirm or explain, help me understand a certain piece of information, a question about myself, or maybe a component of the universe. So I was asking if I was, because I have a lot of different pieces that just don't add up, or they add up to something off, right? I'm like, what does
Mhm.
this mean? Why did I have this? What is this? And so one of the things I was asking, this is after I examined a few things, but is this really a part of my experience that I really have this SSP thing, or are these memories true?
Yeah.
And then right after that, I had within a week's time, I had 4 different psychics tell me, volunteer, not me asking, but volunteer, do you know you were part of the secret space program?
Mm. There you
All
go.
in the same week from different people, right?
Wow.
So that was one of the confirmations. The one of the things that really started making me wonder, well, there was a year where I would have military dreams every night. I was fighting or escaping the military. If I go out of, I used to astral travel a lot. When I would go out of my body, I would try to escape the military. I'd have to run. And then
Mhm.
before I did whatever I was trying to do, like I had these missions, these astral missions I was trying to complete, but I would have to escape the military first. I thought that was really strange. I didn't know why that was occurring. During that time too, I would have these reptilian, not the full being, like not, I didn't see the lizard person or whatever, but it was this feeling of a reptilian being in my
Mhm.
house. It would show up in my house, this energy field that I would see and feel, and then I'd have to kind of chase it out. One of the situations that happened in particular that was super interesting, um, was that, and it had a physical component to it. And I was, it was the middle of winter. I was with my partner at the time, and sometimes she would find herself in my dreams. So we would dream the same dream together, and we would wake up and we talk about it. But this one particular experience, it was different. Um, I remember flying over Alaska, over the tundra. It was icy. I remember the crystal of the ice like reflecting. It was like that blue hue along with the white. And then I saw the snow-covered trees. It was really thick, deep snow. And I remember going up and then down into this tunnel. And in this tunnel, I remember all these different military people from different branches. There was Marines, there was Navy, there was Air Force. They were in this like joint operation in this tunnel, wherever this was. And then that's all I remembered at that point. And then I woke up, and I looked over at her, and we woke up at the same exact time. I just had this dream of flying, and she said, over Alaska. I'm like,
Wow.
yeah. I'm like, do you remember the tunnel? She didn't remember the tunnel. But the really weird part about that was, here we are over this icy scenario, and it's cold in the room. It was about 60 degrees in the room because the heat was expensive in that house. Um, and we have this non-electric down comforter. The comforter had been heated and laid perfectly over us. And so from the corner of the bed, because I reached over and touched on each side, it was hot, equal temperatures on each side. Everywhere on the comforter was a uniform heat, and it was hot everywhere. And so somebody heated it up, and they laid it over us to heat up our bodies.
Wow.
But she didn't remember the part about going under the tunnel. And it was later on, when I went back into regression, that I remember them coming into the room, and then we were taken on board this craft, and we were standing there looking out this like transparent metal, um, front of this craft, watching ourselves go over the tundra, and we were in this like trance, like zoned out state.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in that experience, we both went down and we went into separate areas. And I remember being put in a room and giving these drugs, and they were kind of interrogating me and doing some like mind control stuff.
Mm,
Yeah. So that was that was one of the major things that made me start to really look at it,
okay.
and and then examining what they had done to my mind, because I remember certain experiences, like I would go to sleep and I remember having dreams of being in this place where I was being observed through these glass windows up top, and they were doing tests and experiments on me. Um, Later on, when I started to
Humans, all
really
humans?
humans at that point, yeah, the humans experimented on me. The ETs would help me out and do things with me,
Right.
different.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Um, and then going in the regression, there was a period, because I also do channeling, just like you, full body channeling. So sometimes I haven't done it in a while, but I can have the being come into my body and move my body around.
Mhm.
And I remember the first time I did that, I was at an ayahuasca ceremony, and it was through a group called the Santo Daime, which
Mhm.
is like a
The
church.
church? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so one of the they call them the works. One of the works that they do is the Mesa Blanca, which is a mediumship and channeling work. And in this, I remember people doing these full body channelings, and I just looked and went, I can do that. It was this just instant knowing I can do that. And all of a sudden it started happening. And I was like, and somebody put their hand on my shoulder. I'm like, you need to get up. I'm like, okay. And I got up out of my seat, and then bam, it started happening. And I had all these beings coming through my body, and we were sharing experiences, and I was learning from them and they were learning from me. And it was an amazing experience overall. Um, so that was interesting. And I really never thought about that. Like, why did that happen so instantly? Like, how did I just know? Like, was that from a past life? Was that something hidden in me that I just wasn't aware of? And so one of the things that came up in regression is it actually started much younger than I was aware of.
Mm.
So I was 6 years old in this regression, and I remember being on a table, going down this hallway with these lights over my head. I remember the different lights going on from like the fluorescent lights, and being put in the room with a bunch of other tables. And then they scooted this metal thing over my body, one over the body, and then another that went over the head. And there was people watching and observing, and they turned it on, and it was this vibration went through my whole body, and all of a sudden I felt this insectoid being inside of me, and I felt my shape, my face start to shift into it.
Wow.
And so that was like the earliest point that I remember having an experience. And it also makes sense too, because going back, I remember living in this apartment complex with my mom, and this guy who came and he started talking to me when I was playing in the yard. And he's like, hi. I'm like, hi. And I didn't see him before. I didn't know who he was. He's like, oh, I want to give you some things. I'm like, okay. So he gave me all these military toys, a Marine Corps poster, this Marine Corps flag, a little
Mm.
toy machine gun. I'm like, thanks. And I never saw him again. Why did he give me that? And I kept this poster on my wall for a long time. I had no idea why. I eventually, at the time anyways, I eventually though ended up joining the Marine Corps, strangely enough. I never thought I would actually, but I ended up joining the Marine Corps later.
Wow.
So was that something that where they were shaping me up for? They were like, we're
Right.
gonna program
Grooming.
you. Yeah. So you put this thing in your mind and you see it and you play with it and you start to associate yourself with it in some way.
Yeah.
And I did have some activation experiences in the military too. So I mean, one in particular, I had just moved. Well, I just gotten to San Diego, and I had basically moved in with my then girlfriend, and living off base, and she was shaking the shit out of me, trying to wake me up. She's like, ah, she's freaking out. I heard the cats under the bed freaking out,
Oh, wow.
but I remember being so dead asleep and feeling annoyed that she was waking me up because I was in the middle of something.
Mhm.
And when I slowly started waking up, I noticed that every cupboard in the house was going and all the water faucets have turned on.
Oh, man.
And then when I got up out of bed, like I'm like the more I woke up, the more it slowed down until I was fully awake and it was stopped. And I was like, what is that? What is going on here? I'm like,
Yeah.
huh. And so I just shut all the cupboards, shut all the water off, and I stood there for a second, like, okay, I guess we're done. And I was gonna go back to bed. And she's freaked out. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, going to bed. She's like, you're not scared? You're not freaked out? Why aren't you freaked out? I'm like, well, it stopped, right? She's like, yeah, but I'm like, oh, is it hurting you? She's like, no. I'm like, then go to bed. She's like, ah. But
Wow.
I didn't really understand at that point either. And I'm like, what is that? Was that a ghost? But why did it slow down when I started waking up? But there was
So
something
you
in me
weren't, yeah, you
being
weren't
activated.
totally in this state yet to where it
Yeah.
was freaking you out. You were there.
But I don't normally freak out too easily about those
Yeah.
things anyways.
When you when that's part of your life is just normal. I know. I'm
Yeah. I'm
kind
like,
of,
oh, there's a ghost. Okay.
yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, those things are moving. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets to be normal after a while.
Hmm.
I remember recently where I've been telling my peeps that that I'm ready. I'm becoming ready to see them more in real time, which is, I want to also, you have so much to share. I want to talk more, but I want to talk about our galactic role too, with today, current. And I'm telling them, okay, I'm ready to see you more in real time. And I'm also going through hypnotherapy now to recover more memories, um, that, from my, childhood and current day too, that, because I know, because we're having experiences still,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah. And so we get little pieces of it. We know something's happened there and we get messages and stuff like that, but I want the full blown thing, or as much as I can handle at this frequency.
Yeah.
Yeah. So recently I'm in my rooms, and I'm awake. I'm just falling asleep, and I'm turned on my left side, and my cat is laying up against my chest, and my partner's on the other side. And I see lights come in through the curtains in the room, and there's, the one side of the curtain must have been open a little bit, but there's two lights, and our bedroom is not facing a street or anything like that where it could be headlights. There's no way. It's just impossible unless it's up in the air, but it's kind of straight out. They'd
Hmm.
have to be. It just can't. It have to be a flying car, and it couldn't do it anyway. And I know in my mind that it's them, and I think, okay, they're here. I just think,
Hmm.
okay, they're here, and I tell them in my mind, I'm ready to see you. I'm ready. I just tell them, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready to see you. And so I'm just preparing myself, getting ready. Okay, I'm going to see them, but I'm not really freaked out or anxious. I'm thinking, okay, I want to see you. And then I feel, hands on my body, and on the bottoms of my feet, like padded hands or something like that on my shoulders. And I feel, but I'm bilocating,
Yeah.
but I don't see, what I see is this huge, circular, um, light, strobing lights kind of thing, like LED lights or something with different colors in front of me. And they're moving me around, moving my body around. Um, and I hear my voice sobbing, saying, I'm just so sad. I'm just so sad. And I say it like 2 or 3 times. And they're healing me, is what they're doing. And so these lights are strobing and they're moving my body, and I can feel them moving my body, but I can also feel that I'm still here. My mind is still here. It's it's the strangest thing, but I didn't bring back any memory of seeing them, unfortunately. So I guess I wasn't as ready as I thought I was.
Sometimes, sometimes we think we're more ready than we are for sure.
Yeah. But they are showing themselves to me lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this was like about a year ago or something like that that happened. And lately I've seen them in real time there in my mind's eye, right there, physical form,
Hmm.
and they're talking to me at the same time.
I I just don't like being surprised.
Yeah.
That's my
Well,
thing. Like,
yeah, that happens.
just give
Yeah.
me a little tap. Hey, okay, now I know you're here. What's up? There was one time I was with my girlfriend, and um, I felt there was something in the hallway, and I walked out in the hallway, and there was something that moved. I was like, ah! I went back
Oh,
to my room like, oh.
yeah.
So it was, I just wasn't expecting it, but I
Yeah.
freaked out like a little girl a little.
Did you scream like a little girl? Okay.
Yeah, she was laughing. She's like, "What was that?" I'm like, "Oh, I saw them. I just wasn't expecting it." But when I'm
Yeah.
expecting it, it's fine.
Hmm.
Or when I'm in there's a certain state I can be in, and it's fine. Like I saw them physically appear in the room before, and I was just like, "Oh, hi," and it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's other times I'm like, "Ah."
Yeah. The only time I'm ready for them is when I'm just coming up out of sleep. I'm aware and awake, like or in an out of body experience too, because I do that all the time. But when they're in my room or they're in front of me, if I'm in that state of where I'm still not in the what is it the beta state where my mind is active and I'm just focused on this that kind of thing, then it's free and then it freaks you out. But when
Yeah.
I'm still in the alpha state, i'm I'm not freaked out by them. Yeah.
Yeah, I was when they appeared in the room and I was perfectly calm and seeing them like right in front of me.
Yeah.
It was when I was about to go to sleep.
Yeah, in the alpha state.
Yeah.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
was laying there, I was calm and relaxed, and my eyes are open, but I was just like, "Oh, hi." Yeah.
Right.
I was open to anything at that point.
Yeah.
But when my mind's somewhere else and I'm thinking about something, I get startled in the hallway. I don't like
I just blocked that out apparently because I've asked them
that.
before, how come you don't appear to me, like, or are they, how come you don't appear to me right here or this or that? They say, because you faint. So I
Yeah.
can't, I just pass out. I faint.
It's helpful to talk to the body. So
Mm.
talk to the body why it faints, and then you could release the programming in the body and get the body used to it. So the body has a reaction different than the mind.
Oh, that's
So there,
good. That's good.
yeah. So you're used to the frequencies of the earth. When there's something so foreign and alien, the body goes into this automatic freak out, flight or flight mode.
Yeah.
This is different. I don't know what to do.
That's
This
probably
it's a very primal state that the body goes into.
okay. I love that. I'd never heard that before. Thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you. That's probably what happened to me a couple months ago when I saw this hand in my Alpha say as I'm coming up, this hand, it was an extraterrestrial hand, long fingers, but like this, but it was pure light,
Yeah.
filled with light. And I could see the little tiny red veins in the hand. And it
Hmm.
was just so gorgeous. And I hear a male voice speaking to me. And then it comes down and it touches me on my third eye. I've had three beings touch me on my third eye around the same time. And he says, we're bringing you from the land of the dead. No, he says, you're moving, or we're moving from the land of the dead into the land of the light. And he touches me here. And I had anxiety that day. I couldn't eat for like 2 days
After they did that,
after the
yeah.
being did that. It had that light infusion.
Hmm.
Uh, it reminded me of plant ceremony, feelings, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And when I was during my quickenings, when I was deep in meditation every night, and having that kind of energy running through me, the kind of Kundalini awakening,
Hmm.
it was that type of energy that was running through me. So I like that. Talk to my body and tell me.
Yeah.
So you hear that, folks? Talk to your body and tell your body what? It's okay.
Well,
It's
when you talk to your body, you are going to look at the part of it that is fearful when this reaction happens. So the body remembers when you fainted. So
yeah,
you don't have to really go into the what ifs, but when they are resistant, because there is some piece of information they have there or your body has there. So go into the part of your body that's fearful when they show up.
okay,
Sometimes if people have trouble accessing that, just go into the what part of my body would react if they showed up? What part of my body is resistant or not ready for them to show up? And then start to feel where the energy responds in the body. And when you go into that, start to release the fear by accessing it, just like you do any other emotion, witnessing
right.
it,
Mhm.
talking to it, and then you can invite your higher consciousness into it that already knows the truth to unwind that part of yourself.
Perfect. Yeah. Because I talk to my body a lot with things that are physically, with physical,
Hmm.
things that might be wrong or that, but I never thought about the body reacting to something that's that terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you, Brandon.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
totally. So, let's talk a little bit about current times.
Current times. Yeah, lots happening on the planet right now.
Mhm.
A lot of a lot of shift in the energy, a lot of good things unfolding. Weren't quite there yet, and then there's a lot of chaos and confusion as well. A
Yeah.
lot of manipulation, a lot of truth coming out, and then others trying to counter that truth with more misinformation, more smoke and mirrors. So yeah. So what do we do about that?
Right.
And just like we were talking about before, it's like the galactic beings are all around the planet right now. They're all in ships. They're there, and um, people like us with these encounters, they've never left. So they've been there watching. They've been there waiting. So what are they waiting for? Um, it's just like that Hopi prophecy. We are the ones we've been waiting for.
Right.
They're waiting for us to step into our own empowerment and to realize certain things about ourselves in relation to the creation of a reality. What part do we have in that play, in that creation? So there's a lot of components that we can go into as far as how we deal with this within ourselves and how this actually manifests on the outside. But it really is something that comes from within. And I have so many stories of people that I know or people that I've read about that have experienced the shift in their own reality by shifting their consciousness. And you can go into how does this work through parallel realities or whatnot. So there's many different components of the science that confirms it, but basically, um, you find the place in yourself that this is created from, and oftentimes has to do with emotional attachments or belief systems or whatnot, or it's just maybe just a certain frequency or track that you're resonating with. So how can we actually shift things? That's another question. So you align yourself with the reality that you wish to see. And in manifesting, to say you begin with the end in mind and align yourself to that. And it's basically you allow that to pull you towards it and allow all of your actions, intentions, behaviors, and everything else to line up naturally and organically by beginning with the end in mind so completely that that is your actual truth, not what you seem to be at the time. But that's how you do reality shifting. A friend of mine, she has this technique called the delete technique where she goes into her consciousness and she beliefs the programming, deletes the programming, she deletes the acknowledgement, the witnessing, the every memory of it, the emotions, all around any idea that she's experiencing that she wants to change.
Mm.
And she's
Mhm.
done some miraculous things with this. One of the things she did that she told me most recently is a friend of hers had a guitar and left the guitar out in the sun in the middle of summer when they were camping, and it melted the strings and things on the guitar. She's like, "Oh my God, I just ruined my guitar." And then my friend closed the guitar case and she's like, "You know what we need to do?" And she's like, "Okay." And she's like, "You want to see it?" She's like, "Nope, don't want to see it. Just put it over there." And she went into her process. She deleted all the
Oh, the
memories of
program.
experiencing the guitar with it all mangled. And then she opened back up the guitar case. When she was done, it was completely new again,
That's
back into
amazing.
its real residual state. She did another thing where she had, and this is what she started doing it with healing, but she had experienced, she does gardening, and she was gardening with a friend, and this 500-pound cement block fell on her hand, her friend's
Ooh.
hand. And she had taught her this technique. And again, she's like, well, you know what we need to do. And she pulled out her hand after they got it out, and every bone was broken in her hand. It was swelled up huge. It was black and blue. Her fingers were sideways,
Oh.
right?
Oh.
And shattered. And she's like screaming from pain. She's like, stop, breathe, tune in. They did this delete technique and deleted all the memory, the physical memory of the experience. They deleted the cognitive memory of the experience, and they erased that from their consciousness. And in real time, they watched the bones snap back into place. The swelling reduced. The only thing that was left when they were done was discoloration in the hand.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's that's like 22nd century there.
Yeah,
It reminds me of Star Trek.
yeah.
I'm watching the Voyager series now because I didn't watch it before, and I learned so much from it. But yeah, wow, that's amazing.
So now think about that, and we can apply that more globally. So Lynn McTaggart did some
Hmm.
research, and basically the Maharishi effect. She put that into practice and said, well, let's do some experiments here. And for those that you don't know, the Maharishi effect is basically the effect of a smaller amount of meditators on a larger group population. So during what they did the studies on that, they showed that a meditating group of 100 could affect the population of 1 million and lower the crime rate effectively and consistently every time.
Yeah.
So she did some experiments and said, well, we're going to apply this to see if we can end a war. Hey, there's some
Yeah.
relevant information.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they had said, we're going to end a war. Let's focus on Sri Lanka. And so a group of, I don't remember how many thousands of people, but they all focused on Sri Lanka and the war ending. And the violence spiked up. It was a 27-year civil war,
Mm.
and it ended within a month of them doing this. Shortly after, they saw the violence spike rate way up, and then it dropped.
Wow.
And then it was over. They came to some resolutions or whatever, and then there's one person, they did some attacks and they won. So everything came to a halt. So basically, they just focused on peace. They began with the end in mind. They didn't focus on how it needs to get there, what needs to happen in the interim.
Right.
And when you think about, like, if we get attached to how everything plays out,
Right. Hmm.
we're going to interrupt the process. If you want the most beneficial outcome, you have to let go of the process. So the violence spiked way up, and they could have said, well, this is not working here. What's going on? And freaked out and then backpedaled. But you don't know whose consciousness you're dealing with. You're
Yeah.
dealing with people whose consciousness exists in a warlike state. And so they're going to play it out in a way that they can accept, understand, and be a part of in order to get to the desired results.
There's so many
So
factors.
there's so many different factors. So we can play this out right now with what's going on in Ukraine. If enough of us got together, enough of us in an absolute acceptance a state of faith, a
Hmm.
release, and surrender to the end process that we want to see unfold, we can see that we can see a state of harmony in Ukraine, a state where the people are empowered, a state where the people are in peace, a state where the people are no longer oppressed. So when we do that, we're eliminating all the information that is going back and forth back here, the back end chatter. The back end chatter is, well, Russia is trying to liberate them. They're fighting Nazis. Are they really fighting Nazis? Is this a cover story? Is this
Hmm.
an opportunity that they're using to actually gain control of Ukraine? And that's just the narrative. He said, don't fight back, Ukraine, or we're not going to give you or recognize your independence. In Ukraine, they're saying, well, this is happening. We're bombing ourselves and whatnot. And then you listen to the US news. It's just Russia's a bad guy. He's invading, and people are being oppressed by evil Putin.
Hmm.
Whatever that narrative there is, whatever that story there is, we can let go of all of that. We don't need to be a part of that. What we need to see is the end result.
Right.
And when we focus on that, everything else is going to play itself out.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I've been intuited, so I mean, had so many impressions that definitely back up what you're saying. Of course, confirm what you're saying. I mean, it makes sense. It totally makes sense. And when you become aware, you know, and then in order to change things, you have to visualize and be, like Gandhi says, be the change you wish to see in the world, right? But visualize the world we want, not the world we don't want.
Hmm.
And so if we keep putting our attention on the war, or whatever we don't want to see
Hmm.
happening, we're putting more energy into what we don't want to see. So we have to visualize what we do want, what we've been calling the fifth dimension, moving up
Yep.
in frequency with the 1,000 years, I hope a lot more of peace, but that type of thing. And during one of my hypnotherapy sessions, the last where I'm recovering memories and things like that. And also there's a lot more that comes through, but my guide took me to a space where I was looking out on the world that we are going into. And he was showing me, and I was getting this, I mean, I was just bawling, I mean, just sobbing from the love of the world that we're moving into. And he was showing me how this is possible and that it's here. We just have to rise up to it with, and I've got so many goosebumps talking about it, where we respect each other and we love each other and we don't have wars anymore. I mean, it doesn't mean we don't have disagreements, but we take care of them in a respectful manner. And it's not all about greed. It's not all about, you know, all of that all the negativity that we've been dealing with, and control and mind control and all of that for so many thousands of years that we've been
Yeah.
dealing with enslavement. And it was, I mean, there was just so much, that all that information I was getting as I was watching it, it was just so beautiful. And I'm like, oh, yes, this is what we need to be focusing on.
Well, one of the things that you hear the galactic say over and over through many different sources is work on yourself.
Yeah.
Work on yourself. So we release the anger, we release the fear, we release the judgment, we release the pain, we release all of those things within ourselves that distorts and twists our energy and changes our experience of ourselves, other people, and the world at large. When we begin to do that, our field affects other people's field around us. But we also can understand how those might impact our manifestations of trying to align with an outcome and then seeing these other things along the way. You can't, it's harder to have peace if you're hating the person you're trying to have peace with,
Yeah.
right? So when we go into judgment and discord and blame and all those other things, it just further divides and causes a tension and anger between two different sides.
Yeah.
And that's the things that we're going to split us apart. And it's going to interrupt that process of a global harmony, a global peace.
Right.
So that's
What happened to love your enemy?
right. Yeah,
Sure, that's hard. That's a hard one. It's easy to love someone you love, your friends, your family, and people you like. That's easy, and even neutral people. But how difficult is it? And that's the whole lesson right there. How difficult is it to love a situation or someone, or bless that situation? That's Paul. Paul Selig, right? And the guides
yeah,
that, yeah. And I just love this. What you damns you, and what you blesses you. So what
right.
you're giving out
Absolutely.
comes right back to you, and and that's part of Yeshua Jesus's teachings too.
So that Paul Selig is definitely one of the instrumental pieces that I came through looking at how this whole thing plays out,
Mm,
right? So
nice.
I would listen to these audiobooks. I was doing
Mm,
construction and was listening to these audiobooks while I was working, and I would just kind of meditate while I was doing whatever. And sometimes I'd stop and go into it. But one of the workers that I had an experience there with, I had worked with him for 6 months, and he didn't really speak to me. Um, he came with his roommate, with this female, and me and her would always talk and kind of be a little flirty or whatnot. But he'd always look down, and he wasn't so confident. He never they just said 2 words to me. He offered me some muffins once. He's like, "You want a muffin?" No, thanks. I can't eat it. And that was it. He walked out. That was about it. I was like, oh man, this guy doesn't really talk much. And like psychically, empathically, I'm like, no, he lacks a whole lot of self-confidence. He
Mhm.
doesn't really feel very good about himself. And he does have a crush on his roommate. I'm like, oh, that's
Mm.
interesting. That's probably why he's like that around me. Okay. And I was witnessing that and I was listening to Paul Selig and I'm like, I need to change my definition and my purview. And so I knew what I was experiencing at that time to be true. I knew what I was experiencing to be true in him just by his actions and both my psychic awareness. So I'm like, well, how do I change my purview? So I went back in. I'm like, I'm going to feel and see and experience him in a different way.
Nice.
And so I started to feel him full of confidence. I started to feel him just really sure of himself and really empowered and really happy and just like completely aligned with that higher component of himself. And I saw his light get really bright. I was like, oh yeah, there we go. That's a good feeling. And I did that really quickly and I let it go. And then 20 minutes, I was in the shop getting some tools and he walked in. He's like, oh, hey, how you doing? And he was really super happy. And he was just like this outgoing personality. I was like, wow. And I heard for the first time that he actually had an Australian accent. I was like,
Oh, wow. And
I'm
all
like,
that
I
time you didn't know. Wow.
had
Yeah.
no idea. Yeah,
Oh, and women love Australian accents.
yeah, like use that, buddy. Use that. So he started talking about like he's like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I do this and that. I do energy work. I do hypnosis. Like, oh, I love hypnosis. I'm like, yeah. And he started naming off these hypnotherapists, and one of them that he named off actually specialized in confidence. I'm like, oh, I'm familiar with that guy. He specialized in confidence, and I knew what I was feeling was accurate, and he had been listening to it or whatnot, and then it shifted him.
You create, yeah, yeah. And I'm listening to Selig's book now, The Kingdom, or
Hmm.
the series,
Yeah,
and we talk. He talks about the upper room and bringing your situation or bringing anything that bothers you, into the upper room, and it transforms.
yeah.
Rather than damning it, bringing it into the upper room, it transforms. I got goosebumps talking about. That's amazing. Um, Gosh, funny how things just go in and out.
And
But
here's
go
the
ahead. Yeah.
interesting thing about that story. So people can look at that and go, well, it's a coincidence that you did that, and then he walked in there, and they'll like, well, he was probably listening to that beforehand. So how do you know that you actually caused that through your intention and alignment with that intention? And so here's where some of the science experiments come into play. They did some studies on random number generators,
Hmm.
and they showed that the experimenters can change the outcome of the random number generator as long as they didn't look at it.
Hmm.
So they changed the past when they didn't look at it. So you're stepping into a new version of reality. And this goes back into parallel realities. You're stepping into a version of this interaction that you weren't experiencing before.
Wow, I love that. That's that's really cool. And what we're talking about here, just for me, confirms the fact that we are uh, changing coding within our
Yeah.
matrix.
Yeah.
And then we're biological computers basically. And
Hmm.
yeah, so we're changing our coding, and as the theory, or we know that things, just like what you were talking about, if you don't look at your past, then you can change it, kind of thing. Of nothing really kind of really exists unless it's in our awareness, and
Yeah.
which really blows my mind. And I had a hard time with that when I was in plant ceremonies.
And it's not that you can't change the past either once you look at it, but it's
Yeah.
harder because you're dealing with more sets of belief systems.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I
it's
get it.
just like my friend who there was another experience that I didn't share that she was actually her and a friend who she taught this technique to were seeing somebody on the side of the street. She's like, let's try it. Let's change realities where he's not there. And they watched him disappear in front of their eyes.
Oh gosh.
So but her reality, her belief system, her
Right.
acceptance of her reality is that I can change anything if I change my belief system and understanding and acceptance of a thing to align myself with something different.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that totally reminds me of a book I read recently, and I can't remember what book it was or some article or something where a hypnotist was hypnotizing. And it's hypnosis, basically. We're all
Yeah,
hypnotized. When we
yeah,
believe something, we're hypnotized, right? Especially programming with TVs. That's all hypnosis.
yep.
It's all hypnosis with all our social media, everything, all the information, boom, 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 coming at us. That's why they call it programming. My God. So, so yeah. So he was hypnotizing someone, and it was a group thing where a gentleman and there was a person standing in front of him, and he hypnotized him to see through this person, not see this person in front of him, so he could see his daughter on the other side, on the other, on the other side of that person. And he did not see, he was not able to see the person in front of him. He could see through that person
Hmm.
to his daughter,
Yep.
where he would have been blocked, if he still had that same belief, hypnotic belief that that person was there, his creation of it, his
And, and
momentary belief system right there.
think about like what needs to happen there.
Yeah.
They're standing at the same place in two different realities. That's what needs to happen there for that experience. They're standing in the same place in two different realities. And well, how is that possible? They did some other new science experiments that showed quantum states can be observed two different outcomes simultaneously by two different observers. So you can have two states at the same
Mm,
time
hmm.
that are different from one another.
Yeah.
And that's what this is. It's a
Well, that
quantum
happens
state.
all the time with UFOs, doesn't it?
It does. It happens all the time at UFOs. You're being aware. Uh, that can be a little bit different because like, are you open in the spectrum of your awareness? Is your perception because your frequency band is broader and you're just aware of it in that way, or is it that you're actually in two different realities? So it can occur in
Mhm.
different ways there. It doesn't necessarily have to be um, the quantum entanglement reality thing.
Okay. Quantum entanglement. Yeah. That I've and I think Dolores Cannon talks about this. I'm not sure, or else I just had this memory or this intuitive inspiration from my peeps, extraterrestrial peeps, that when they come to get us, sometimes they do that. They change or freeze the reality, because in my memories I've seen where they've froze another person in my what would they come to rescue me from someone who's harming me, and
Hmm.
they freeze that reality, they change freeze it,
Yep.
put it on freeze frame. And then but I'm not frozen, and
Right.
they take me.
Yeah. And we have that ability too.
Yeah.
We don't know that we have that ability, but we have that ability too. And I've experienced this myself, and other people typically experience this when they're like in a life or death situation. Like think about how many people get in a car accident or something like that, which is what happened to me. And time seems to freeze,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
your mind is going the same speed.
Right, slow down
Like,
time.
yeah, just slow down time.
I've
So
done that when I was late to catch a plane. Now that we're talking about this, I've forgotten about
mhm.
this, where I was late to for a connecting flight, and um and my peeps told me you can make your flight. It was like impossible to be able to make it. The flight was late, and they showed me how to stretch time in my
Nice.
mind.
Hmm.
They showed me how to do it, and I stretched it, and I made the flight.
Yeah, I love it when those things happen.
Yeah,
And sometimes we experience those, or I experience things like that. And then I wonder, well, why don't I do this stuff all the
I
time?
know. I know. We forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you noticed that with things ramping up now, that things are manifesting for you a lot quicker?
I I noticed that a long time ago, the more I clear out my internal clutter, the
Mm,
easier it is for manifestations to occur,
good point.
sometimes instantly. And but we're at a time now where everything's happening concurrently, the speeding up of the planet, the speeding up of the energy, the shifting of the energy on the planet, the consciousness of the individuals on the planet. So collectively, we're shifting. Globally, the Earth itself is shifting, and as that happens, and the solar frequencies, the solar flares and everything kick up more. Yeah, it's just more and more is being activated. So yeah, manifestations happen super easy.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, especially with the solar activity.
Hmm.
I think that has a lot to do with what's going on for sure. So with them, you're aware of Elena Denon and Michael
Yeah,
Sala and his work.
yeah.
Okay,
I actually wasn't aware of Elena Denon, or
Denon.
however you say it. Yeah,
Yeah.
until you sent me that video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
aware of Alex Collier and Michael Sala, but what wasn't aware of her.
Right. Okay. Well, I actually got this from her website, the Jupiter Ashtar Command.
Oh,
On
nice.
Yeah, and I feel really connected with the Ashtar Command and the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And I hadn't heard of her until the last maybe 4 months or so.
Hmm.
And the reason that I resonate with her information is because 33121 during my meditations, I asked to be for my peeps to show me who I'm working with now, of the star beings who I'm working with now. And I had a clear vision. I mean, right there, not just like I see you in my
Hmm.
meditation, of a gentleman wearing a blue uniform, just right there in front of me, looking at me. As he was wearing a red, kind of a headgear helmet thing. I thought it was hair at first, but I realized it wasn't. I drew him, and a blue uniform with the shoulder. Can't remember what those are called. I can't remember
Shoulder
it.
pad,
The
the tassel
epaulets,
thing.
epaulets, or um, across the shoulders, like the bars or something
Yeah,
across your.
the bar thing that sits there on
Yeah.
the shoulders and the
Okay.
military uniforms.
Yeah, he had that
Yeah.
on, and then he had an insignia right here that I remember was gold, like a gold triangle with had symbols. That's all, because it was maybe 5 seconds that he was there, and he was just had a father-like kind of energy to him, just looking at me very kindly and sweet. Not a big smile or anything, just very kindly, like, here I am. And it wasn't more than a month or so later. No, so it was longer later. But it's how long have I known about her? Maybe 6 months. I can't remember. Anyway, but it was this. No, it was the end of last year. Time just doesn't make any sense anymore. And I came across Elena Denon, and she's talking about the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and she's an artist, and she drew who she works with, and he wears a blue uniform
Wow.
with the shoulder things, exactly like what I saw him wearing, and an insignia with the blue kind of triangle. But this is the Ashtar Command, uh, and theirs was the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And I'm like, holy moly! I so I got her books, and she's bringing through a lot of information from the Galactic Federation of Worlds, where she's gone to other planets with her dude Thor Han, and her role is to bring through information that they have taken out the baddies, the reptilians. I remember seeing reptilians in my room too. I saw them in my room in real
Yeah.
time when I was going through my deal. Uh, Scary. They were in the fourth dimension though, but I could see them. Yeah, it was. Yeah, but they've taken down out the baddies, and so now it's up to us, like you're saying,
Yeah.
to to bring ourselves out of enslavement.
Yep. Yep. We have to undo our own conscious programming that's been done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because yeah, it's so important.
I don't typically focus on the Galactic Federation or Ashtar Command, but I did have an experience with them.
Hmm.
It was kind of interesting. Um,
Cool.
I well, I saw a shadow being when I was really young. And I remember when I saw that, it was like something jolted me out of a deep sleep. And I looked out in the hallway, and there was a shadow being, and every hair in my body stood up, and I was speechless. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. I was literally petrified.
Mm.
And the shadow being stopped, and it looked at me, and it stood there for a second, and it looked forward, and it kept walking. And I don't know why that particular being like have that effect on me, but I obviously didn't get a good feel. But when I was in Iraq, I had an experience. I was in a room and it was padlocked on the inside, so nobody else could come into the room. But I rolled over and I looked and I opened my eyes and there was this shadow being standing in the middle of my room. And I remember at that time though, I was completely calm, not at all the same kind of feeling as the first one. Might have been different groups or something, and I don't know why they manifest as a shadow being or whatnot. But I remember telepathically asking, "Well, who are you?" And it said, "Well, I'm a junior officer in the Galactic Federation." I'm like, "Okay, okay." And I rolled over. I'm like, I had to process that. I'm like, "What the did he just say?" Galactic Federation junior officer. What on earth? And I looked back again and it was gone. I'm like, damn it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's apparently the Galactic Federation of Worlds is
Mhm,
the federation that she works with, and who apparently I know, uh, and um, not the Galactic Federation of Light. That's the different. That's according to that information, is that's something maybe that's Earth bound or something like that. It's
oh,
yeah. Uh, but the Galactic Federation of Worlds is a military type of thing where all these planets work together for our liberation, for not just for us, but for the galaxy, to
mhm.
help planets um, that need help, and watching over them as they move it, as they evolve. And they've been watching us for thousands of years, ever since the baddies came on and started enslaving humanity. Yeah, and I don't mean all reptilians are baddies, but the really big baddies are the ones that were here, and the other uh, gray types beings. Yeah.
Yeah,
So um, one thing I wanted to mention about that too is that video that I sent you. Did you watch it by
I did.
chance?
Yeah, I
Okay.
did. Mhm.
So there's some information there that Michael Sala, and if you don't know Michael Sala, I highly recommend him to the audience. He does a lot of research, and he only brings to information that's corroborated from others. And he has a military insider, I think he's in the army, that goes to other planets. And apparently and there's arcs or huge spaceships buried all over the planet and the galaxy, from extraterrestrials that were here a long, long, long time ago and left. Had to do with the Lyran Wars, when they seeded our planets and stuff like that. And there is a time when certain species evolve or come to a certain point where things need to happen, and they move up shift, that these arcs are going to be activated, and apparently they're being activated now.
Yeah, I didn't catch they were being activated now, and I heard that then mention arcs, but I
Okay.
was multitasking a little bit.
Okay, yeah. It's one of those things that you sometimes you have to watch a couple times, or I get it. And but one is in Ukraine.
Oh, yeah. I think I do remember them saying something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And apparently that has to do, I don't know, who knows? We can never, none of us here on this, you know, in our little worlds, in our worlds, can really know what's happening.
Because Alana said too that her guide had told her separately from the information that he was given that there was that and or something like that. I think she called it something different. I don't remember, but it was in Western Russia, which
Another one,
yeah.
that there was another one in Western Russia. Yeah, and and they're becoming active. Another one in Antarctica,
Mm.
that apparently the Chinese and the Germans, the Nazi Germans, the Nazis were trying to activate, but they couldn't for a long time, and they couldn't. That it's become active, but the Galactic Federation of Worlds was able to get that away from them, according to this intel, and that the one in Ukraine has become active, but it can only the the technology of these arcs can only be used or understood by people who have the DNA coding, the correct DNA coding. In other words, you have to
Yeah.
be a star seed and star seed in a certain line that is in line with the beings that left these arcs.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think it's less to do with, well, it's the DNA coding, but it's the consciousness of the DNA coding activates, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And which could, and I think they mentioned this, Alex Collier maybe did, that could have a lot to do with why they're trying to change our DNA so badly.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, um, I had COVID, and I had I'm pretty sure it was the Omicron variant,
Mhm,
and because it came on strong and fast, and it had different symptoms. Affected my hearing. It felt like I was underwater.
mhm.
But one of the things that I noticed is that it shut off my ability to connect. So my intuition and my feeling of closeness to creator was shut off.
Yeah,
And that's specifically um, one of the things that they were targeting.
I've heard that.
And I saw previously to this whole pandemic thing, I saw them talking about the God gene and it being able to be shut off or activated, like them being able to control the God gene.
Yeah.
And so this was something that was talked about well before this played out. And think about all the stuff that we just talked about, and think about how not only are they trying to shut everybody off so that we don't have access to that greater part of ourselves, but they're trying to manipulate and control what we're interacting with, how we're perceiving things,
Mhm.
and how we are emotionally reacting, so that it keeps this sense of separation so that they stay in power. So it's all playing out together, and that we're easier to control that way.
Oh,
I've
totally.
talked I've talked to other people who they have witnessed in other people who have either gotten COVID or gotten the shot, and then suddenly the person stopped praying, they stopped meditating, they
Mm,
stopped going into that space within themselves, and it wasn't something that that person had consciously recognized within themselves, but
mm.
the outside observer looking at them saying, well, wow, they totally stopped these activities. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I was in this state, and then I remembered, oh yeah, I have this rife machine. I should use my rife machine. And I started to clear out the spike
What's a
protein.
rife machine?
Um, a rife machine is basically, it's something that was invented by Raymond Royal Rife. And it can, when he invented it, he also had a microscope that can see everything down to like the very, very small component, like an electron microscope, but
Mm,
it did it without killing viruses. And so he was able to see bacterial components in it.
okay.
And then this other frequency machine, he was able to shatter the viruses using frequencies through this plasma tube. And so I have a Rife machine, and it works differently than, well, I have a plasma tube too, but I use another one that works on scalar technology. So it works remotely,
Wow.
and I can plug that in, and I can scan my body, and it will either dismantle things in my body through the frequencies, or I can scan it and see where basically there's this biofeedback system where it reacts and what I need to look at.
Okay.
So when I did that, I was able to clear just enough to break through, because there was the machine I have, they did an update where they put in the spiked protein frequency. And so I was able to clear it just enough. And then I had to consciously push the rest of the way through, consciously push and meditate and reach out to creator to kind of bust the other stuff away.
That's amazing. I know I've heard that before too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, we've we've gone a long time, Brandon.
yeah, we have.
Right? We got to do this again.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for chatting with me. And
Uh,
yeah, hopefully you'll come back.
yeah, absolutely, just let
Okay.
me know.
So
Yeah, thanks
stay
for having me
tuned for
on.
part 2, people. Okay. And thank you everyone for being here and listening once more. And of course, please subscribe, share, and like the video, which I'm sure you will like, and comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say and about the conversation.
And let us know if you have any particular questions or things that you want us to cover the next time too.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Brandon.
Right. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Mwah.